All right, we're being recorded. So I thought it'd just be important just to go through a little bit of an overview of who Uniform are, and then we'll go into a bit of a tech demo and get down to really what we're around. But we all started out about 3.5 years ago at Uniform. A lot of us actually worked at Sitecore in the product team, so pretty familiar with it. You know, for the last 3.5 years, we've been solving a couple of different problems and have 2 different offerings on the market today. So we've got Uniform for Sitecore. We've also got Uniform Canvas. Now, I think it's just important to go through where this all started out, because 3.5 years ago, I guess, when we started out with Uniform for Sitecore, this was really a way of deploying existing Sitecore XM or XP sites to the Jamstack. So really, you know, allowing people that had created their sites using SXA and JSS and MVC on maybe older or maybe the latest versions of Sitecore, deploying that to the Jamstack to get, you know, really great performance and experience, but also allowing organizations that do that to actually carry on using Sitecore's tools like the experience editor and the rules editor. So from a usability and from a marketer's point of view, Sitecore stays exactly the same. You get to use the rules editor and the experience editor, and Uniform sort of had this way of deploying that to the edge in a Jamstack manner, and also had a way of converting those personalization and optimization rules into logic, which is Uniform's IP, which is executed on the edge through the CDP. So if you have personalization, and most people or most organizations purchased Sitecore with personalization in mind, this allowed you to deploy this to the edge and keep personalizing. So obviously there's some massive advantages. I'm not going to spend today talking about why Jamstack's such a big topic now, and you know why pre-rendering sites is good, but reducing running costs and blazing fast sites, you know, getting under 50 milliseconds for page loads is pretty standard with Uniform, which was really quite difficult with sort of PaaS or IaaS or self-hosted setups. And of course that's come really to fruition with the Google core metrics taking site speed into consideration as well. So, you know, that's really where we came from. We've actually got a great white paper on this and FAQ that I can give to anyone that's interested. We've got a lot of great customers from Clepia, Guide Dogs, etc., that are using Uniform on Sitecore as well. So do reach out if you want to see that. So that's the first offering that we started out with around 3.5 years ago. Obviously, that's something that, you know, we're really keen on getting more customers in regions. So if you do know of customers which are struggling with performance or still want to do personalization but want to use Jamstack and a decoupled architecture, then come and talk to us. But over the last sort of 18 months or so, the team's been working quite heavily on Uniform Canvas. So what is Uniform Canvas? This is sort of the latest release. We actually released this only a couple of weeks ago. It has been in beta for about 6 months with certain partners as well. But what this is a no-code composition and orchestration management for websites in that composable digital experience platform. So what that really means is it's a smart grid. It's a no-code interface for marketers and non-technical people to create pages, create experiences, personalize them, but actually use best-of-breed tech stack for that. So Sitecore from a CMS point of view, but maybe Contentful with Sitecore, maybe Boxever, but maybe also commerce tools and or BigCommerce. So having a variety of best-of-breed SaaS offerings, and Uniform integrates those and allows the marketers to drop components built in front-end technologies onto a page and source the content from those systems in a completely decoupled environment. So this also has things like preview, publishing, testing, and personalization. So the things that historically, when you're talking to marketers that are used to the sort of monolithic ways, they like the experience editors from Sitecore. When they go to a decoupled environment, which is headless, they're thinking, well, I'm going to lose that. With Uniform really fills that gap. We provide that interface so that marketers could quickly create pages, quickly test pages, quickly put personalization in pages, but utilizing those best of breed systems such as Boxever or the likes of Sitecore CMS or even best of breed SaaS offerings like Contentful, Content Sanity. So that's sort of where we are and where we've come from. When you actually look at this, there is a great point here that developers have always really wanted to go with this SaaS approach. Sitecore are talking a lot at the moment about the composable DXP and to be able to choose the best pieces of SaaS technology for the project. From a content management system, we all obviously love Sitecore, but there are other projects where maybe that's not the right choice, but 451 for commerce would be the choice. So it's really about choosing the right platform from a content management, a commerce, analytics, choosing the right front-end framework, whether that's Next or Nott or Gatsby, and choosing the right CDN to deploy that on. Now, Uniform provides that integration layer and provides that canvas that we call that allows marketers to then create pages and utilize content from content management systems, products, pricing, promotions from commerce systems, and actually pushing those to analytics platforms of your choice. So we're really seeing this as a decoupled way of providing a composable digital experience platform. If you do want to see this more, we have a free trial that you can go, uniform.app. You can go through our onboarding wizard. You can choose your CMS, you can choose your commerce platform, you can choose your analytics platform, and you get a demo site that you can then play around with, all the codes pushed to your chosen Git repository and delivered the site through your chosen CDN. So really cool. I did it in about 3 minutes. I've got a video of me doing it. I can actually pass that to you if you're struggling, but if I can do it, anyone can do it. I think Christian can do it in 1.5 minutes, but it took me 3. So we have two different offerings in the market today, Uniform for Sitecore and Uniform Canvas. Today's demo and where we're going to go really and show you what's happening, Christian will show you a bit of both, but I'll pass over to Christian now.
Thank you, Jerry. Good afternoon, everybody. So let me share my screen here. Could you please enable screen sharing for me?
Try.
Not sure if you can do it, Jerry, but if you have the host privileges, no.
You should be able to share now, Christian. And if not, Jerry might have to stop sharing.
No, I'll just get get Jerry out of the way. Yeah, Sherry. How are you, honey? So for this demo, which is essentially showing how we can utilize Sitecore and Canvas and utilize what we already have in Sitecore to create headless compositions. I'll show you a workflow where I utilize an existing smaller site in Sitecore that has a layout, it has rendering set up and all of that. And then when from a story point of view, we as a business have decided that we want to take part of that, part of our Sitecore solution, and basically start to deploy that in a different manner and bring that site fully onto the edge and moving that into a more decoupled approach. So I'll start the story in Sitecore and just show you what I have there. Then I'll take you through how we can take existing renderings and layouts in Sitecore and create configurable components of that we can move into this completely headless and decoupled approach. And then I'll show you how we will then wire up new React-based components to those definitions and show how we would now pull content from Sitecore and basically create that fully operational page. In this scenario, it's just one landing page, but you might as well do templated pages or product category pages, etc. So there's a lot of use cases for this, but for the sake of time, we'll sort of just keep it to one single page for now. And then once that page is operational, we will basically mix in components from my component library that will allow me to now mix and match content and commerce and utilize orchestration from Uniform Canvas across all of these multiple systems in a unified or uniform interface. So in Sitecore, as I said, I need to reload my content editor here for a second. In Sitecore, I have a few simple sites set up, and my Modena site consists of some content at a single page. So I have some heroes and a story, and of course I have my my layout set up, and I have a bunch of renderings set up. So in the rendering section, I have a footer, header, hero, and a story. Those are the renderings and the layout that goes with that I want to move into Uniform Canvas. And as Jerry said, Canvas is an orchestration tool that allows business users a unified interface across all of these headless platforms. So instead of having to navigate through multiple systems to basically create these experiences. Business users will use a singular tool that contains the same workflow regardless of the backend system, and thereby creating this truly agnostic and truly composable platform. So first off, what I would do was that I would need to go to a quick admin tool that we have as part of our platform that allows me to hook into to the layouts and rendering. So what I do is I basically define where in Sitecore I want to tap in, and then I serialize this and bring that out of Sitecore. Once I have that out of Sitecore, I can pull this into my code repository, and I can use Uniform's common language runs, our CLI, to basically push my components into a uniform canvas. So from Sitecore, I use the extraction tool to create a representation of all of these components and compositions, and I use our CLI to push them in. Because the CLI is available, this could be a more or less fully automated process as well that I could use as part of builds or something similar. So now my component library in here has the renderings that you saw from before, and also my landing page essentially set up. And we'll go into a bit more details in a second about this. The component library holds what is the equivalent of renderings, and my composition would hold what would be the equivalent of a page template. It's currently lacking, and this would be my home page. So the second part of this would be that I want to basically pull in that page, which was my home page. So I have the composition. When I pull this in, I will have the composition in uniform now, and that will hold basically the renderings that was on my original page in Sitecore, including all of my data sources, etc. To get everything sort of wired up inside of Uniform, I would want to add my Sitecore integration to the equation here. So what I do here is basically give some information to Uniform about how we want to communicate with Sitecore to query and basically render content from Sitecore when we do our builds. So what I'm doing here is I'm just adding a URL and a Sitecore Services Client API key that I've configured and the site that I want to work with. So that is now in there, and now I'm basically ready to go with a full integration towards Sitecore. So now I can open up my composition. So this is essentially what I got from Sitecore. So in Sitecore, I had a landing page called Home. It was attached to a layout that was a product landing page. It had some placeholders, header, content, and footer. And in each of those, I had in Sitecore defined which components got in there and how they were then wired up. So what I now see is that my hero was wired up to a default hero inside of Sitecore, and I would be able to jump straight into Sitecore to start editing that. One thing I want to point out is, of course, when we have our component library configurations, the configurations hold the relevant information that my front-end application would need to render properly. So it holds configuration about naming and parameters. Parameters is essentially what becomes props in your front-end component. And one thing to note here is my data source, which is a Sitecore item. That is a part of Uniform's integration. So when you add the integration, this becomes available. And in here, I would be able to choose and say, when I work with my hero, editors should be able to choose heroes from the Modena side in Sitecore, and the data source location would be this particular ID. I could also put in a relative Sitecore path in there, but let's just add it like this. So once that is in there, and I have my composition, if I wanted to switch out my hero, instead of navigating the actual tree, oh, sorry, pressed the wrong button. Instead of navigating the tree, I would not just see exactly where in Sitecore my heroes were, so much as you would be used to in Sitecore. So we try to make it as easy for content editors that do work in Sitecore to also work in this new manner. So now that everything is in there, we of course can preview the site. So what happens when I add the preview site here is that we render basically the raw component layout, but of course we don't necessarily yet have the actual implementations of these components. So with the partners and in the scenarios that we work, it would typically be that a client expresses the interest in having some page, and they might have an idea about which components have to go in there, much as we have here. So they know they need a header component, they know they need a hero component, a story component, and a footer component to start creating their landing page. how do they then communicate that to the agency, what they would need? Well, with their Sitecore solution up and running, they could basically just create this component, the hero component, and unfold the props here and show this would be the data contract that I would want a developer to use when they work against the integration here. The output of these props can be completely customized and controlled through Uniform's middle layer, which we call, it's a set of enhancers. So from a technical point of view, essentially an enhancer understands how to query a backend system, and you can then completely tailor on the other side of that how a set of enhancers might work together to form the output that would be specific to a specific implementation. So what would now typically happen would be that an agency would be having a conversation with the customer or client about, okay, dear Mr. and Mrs. Customer, how would you want your hero components to look? So they would do work in Storybook and they would agree on this is how it looks and what data would we need in there. This would then be handed over to a front-end dev of some sort at the agency, of course, and that front-end dev would now go and implement. So now it becomes slightly interesting from our part, because what we do with Uniform's platform is that we try to basically create as much power of choice to the agencies and the customers as we possibly can. That means that basically in every aspect of this journey, you would be able to do things in exactly the way that you wanted to. So how we provide you data, the enhancers are in there. You could write your own, but we provide you with one out of the box. But all of the chained enhancers would be something that you could provide. We could also provide you some of them. And for most of our enhancers, we do have enhancers to clean up data and do stuff with that. But essentially, you would do that. You would choose your own type of framework. So whether that would be Next, Nox, Gatsby, whatever, you would choose your own hosting provider. So in essence, trying to give you as much choice as possible all the way through the chain. So in this simple scenario, a developer would go off and create a hero component, standard React component. And what is also interesting here is from a decoupled point of view, this component has absolutely no understanding of how it's being used, which means we basically just pass in props to the component. So that completely decouples the front-end devs from the framework, which gives them the utmost basically flexibility when they work with their front ends. That enhancer layer can essentially also be decoupled. So we can run that as a proxy layer. So you can run it from a serverless function and thereby further creating very nice sort of separations of concerns in your stack. So now a dev has gone and created a hero that is based on what was in Storybook. And now we basically want to start enabling the newly created components in our headless stack. So what we would want to do is we want to wire them into my build. So let's wire up the header and the footer first and see that once we put that in there, we now, of course, start loading content up. So where I basically enable them is in our component mapper. Because I have a standardized way of communicating, I can just enable these components and everything starts to work basically. So the hero comes in here. And once the hero loads, we're now basically loading content from Sitecore into our headless application and into this decoupled, DSP experience. So the last component I want in here for now is, of course, my story. So now I have everything up and running for the start of my landing page. If we go back into Uniform, the story is there loading up from, we can see where in Sitecore we loaded the heroes there. The header and footer basically doesn't have any implementation as such. They're just simple components. So from here on, I would like to, as a customer, to basically put in more content. I want some content from a different content source that I have in my enterprise. And I also want to bring in commerce because I want to be able to add products to this particular landing page. Modena is a clothing company that sells different types of clothes. So let's move on through and do that. So if there are any questions, this would be a nice place to pause for a second. Are there any questions so far? I take that as a no. Feel free to ask anything as we go through this. So what I do now is I basically bring in another set of components. So again, all of what you see in Uniform is just configuration. There's no implementation in there, and there's nothing in there that ties us to a specific framework. So what I did now was just bring in a set of other components. But before we move on, let me give you an idea about what do we mean when we say configuration. First of all, let me just bring this up side by side so we can see what is going on as we move through this. So here we go, and let's just zoom out a little bit. So there we go, so we can actually see what is going on. Let me know if this might be a bit too small, but it's just to make sure that we have a bit more screen real estate to work with. So in Uniform, when we define our compositions, as you can see on the left-hand side of the screen now, this is the output of Uniform's composable DXP. So we basically give you a JSON output. It's a structure that is just giving information about what does this UI or this composition, what is that composed of? So you see there is a product landing page in there, which is my top composition that contains a set of what we call slots, the footer, the header, and content. And inside my content slot, I have two different content items, one from the story from Sitecore and the hero from Sitecore. They're both Sitecore items, and they are basically just represented as Sitecore IDs in here. So once that runs through our enhancers, in the other end, this is the output of those. And the enhancer that I did on Sitecore for this demo basically dumps out the entire Sitecore item. In a real world production scenario, I would create additional functionality on my Sitecore enhancer to just basically comply with what I saw in Storybook. So those 5 or 6 properties that was needed to render my hero. I don't need the entire item. And by basically cleaning up that data, I would also make sure that my bundle that's delivered onto the edge would become significantly smaller. But then you see a Uniform's configuration output and what actually gets into your applications as what is rendered through the enhancers. So we go from configuration to something that you put into your enhancer. That explains a bit about that. So the next step that we want to do is we want to take a look at our component library now, because now we have significantly more components available to us. And to make sure that I can use my different components, I want to configure my content slot a little bit. The slots have the ability to, of course, hold components, and a slot can be contained in another component. So I can create hierarchies of slots by having slots in other components. But right now, I'll just add a few more components in here so that I can start creating a sort of more full landing page experience. Let's see, did we get everything? The list, the heroes are there, the according. So yeah, I think we're good to go. So what I can now do and build out is a more comprehensive landing page that will hold content from Sitecore and will start to add some products from my BigCommerce backend. So what is interesting to note here as well is that my user experience utilizing BigCommerce is the same user experience as I had utilizing Sitecore basically, but now I'm just adding content from a completely different repository, and as my preview loads, it will then load my products on into the page as well. So let's just add the list of products here as well. So this is a mixed bag of clothes. It's for my fall 2021 campaign, and let's select a few products in here. So choosing products here allows me again to select more products. And please bear in mind that this is just configuration that we have set up in Uniform. The actual implementation is just as with the hero is actually in my React implementation. And just as with the hero, you saw the components that are rendering this does not have any understanding of that they're being used with BigCommerce. So I could switch out BigCommerce for commerce tools just by changing the configuration in Uniform, and then I would be able to choose commerce tools products instead and render them into my component. So completely agnostic and completely unopinionated. So last but not least, I want an accordion in here, which will go into the bottom of my page. This is actually coming from Contentful. So I'll just choose that and add some contentful data in here as well. So now the page is essentially done. I have my hero with content from Sitecore and my story with content from Sitecore, 2 components that are rendering content from BigCommerce, and then something that renders it from commerce tools. So far, so good. So now we have a pretty decent landing page, but now we of course want to personalize, test, and then deploy to the edge. And as you can see, this all happens in the same tool and super easy to work with here. So I need to give this a name. So the name here is basically me giving it an identification in my analytics engine, which for the purposes of this is Google Analytics. So I'm basically dropping, okay, so I need to add this again. So when I updated my components, it actually just refreshed this one, so it removed what I had configured. So I'll just choose the hero for women. And then I say, if you are then categorized or seen as a woman, we want to show you a different heroes. Let me just remove this one. So over here, I can now say, if you were actually categorized as a woman navigating the website, this is what you would see. So this would be the hero that you would see. So let's do the same for the story. So we'll personalize this, give it an event name. So the event name, as I said, would go into my analytics, and we would then store the personalization events so that a use case that would be enabled out of the box would be, you would have the ability to say, if, or I would now like to create an audience inside of Google Analytics that I would like to remarket against. So anyone that has seen the woman personalization variant, please create an audience and let's create an ad that will basically target them. And as you just see here, we just loaded in the personalization for women here as well. So let's just personalize what we have from BigCommerce as well. So this would be my products personalization. And let's add the last product collection list in here. So this would be my, we call this the fashionable females. If I could spend fashionable ladies fall 2021. So we want to find something for the women in the audience. So we got her high heels and a shirt and a dress, and we'll basically drop that in there as well and say, if you are, again, if you are part of our female audience, this is what you would see. And as we read out, this is it. So what we have now is a fully personalized page, personalizing across multiple sources in the same tool. Last but not least, we want to test whether we should show one bag or the other. So I basically attach a test that I have already set up in Uniform. A test in Uniform is essentially a placeholder for reporting. So we use that to aggregate reporting data around the test so that we can help you choose which works better, one or the other. And so I add a new featured product in here and choose a different product from my Modena product catalog, add a different bag in there. And I need a variant as well. Say I want to use my secondary variant. So variants are a way for us to vary component layouts or specific components. So now I have a fully personalized tested landing page, multiple sources in there. And the last thing I'll do is just publish this. So what we do now is we basically trigger a build behind the scenes. I'm running multiple builds in this scenario. So I'm running a preview build on Vercel. So that will go off and build my landing page now. And as you can see, my preview now is running on localhost because I have the developer server running. But I would have a Vercel preview build that would be sort of my enterprise-wide preview. And then I have a production build running off of Netlify that will also do the Cloudflare deployment. But essentially, I could run any CDN to do this. And we would support personalization on workers or edge Lambda functions. Essentially, any CDN, we have ready-made implementations for some of those, but essentially any CDN that offers edge workers in some way, shape, or form would be able to support edge-based personalization as well. Or if you choose to, you can also push this essentially into the actual client. So for now, let's pause for a second and take questions or comments or anything. And while we wait for questions, the worker will wrap up the build in the back. So any questions or comments?
Good one, Christian. I just want to know, just interested to know, how is this uniform.app built? I mean, what are the APIs used to build that particular left-hand side of the page? Is there anything that you can share?
No, not specifically. That's our IP. So to be quite honest, I have no idea what APIs or what they have used in there. I know we're using some specific libraries and stuff like that, but otherwise it is custom built by our tech team.
Cool.
I guess, Navan, the point is that that's the SaaS part there. That's the composition editor. So you integrate into that, and it's fully documented how the integrations with the other SaaS platforms work and or Sitecore CMS. Did you have a specific question you wanted to know on that?
No, nothing much. I mean, it's very interesting the way you showed me how commerce is getting integrated in the various products. It looks so simple with the way it is done. So I just I thought if I could understand some parts of it, then I would be able to look at other platforms and see how that can be integrated into this, because you're doing integration with different kinds of platforms, right? Like the true composability is coming out of this. So if I have to look at a totally external product, what else do I need to know to compose it into this? That's what I want to know.
It's a good, yeah, perfect. That's a super relevant question. In this sprint and the next sprint, we're bringing out a full full bring your own framework that will allow you to much easier wire up your own CMSs, your own data platform. So essentially create an integration framework that will allow you to much easier plug in new systems into this platform. Currently, an integration would require some of our engineering team to help you out. As soon as the framework is ready built, it will be available so that you would go and build your own integrations against this app as well, against this SaaS platform. Currently, there are a bunch of integrations that we supply out of the box. So we, in this demo, I'm using BigCommerce, Contentful, Sitecore, and Analytics. We also come out of the box with Commerce Tools, Content Stack, Insanity, and are supporting parts of the Salesforce cloud as well. So Salesforce CMS and parts of Salesforce Marketing Cloud are enabled in there. So enabling Salesforce CMS, for instance, would basically put this on top of Salesforce CMS and allow Salesforce CMS users to do exactly what I did just with Salesforce CMS. The Marketing Cloud allows you to integrate with the email marketing part of the Marketing Cloud and basically use the campaign setup in there for personalization. And we then push the data from our platform back there. So information about who did what on the campaigns on our part of the platform, that would be pushed back to Salesforce. So this is what's available out of the box now. Coming up soon is a handful of other both CMSs and other platforms that we're looking at to integrate. But right now, the full focus on our side is getting the integration framework ready, because that will unfold the story for partners and agencies. And we have a good handful of partners lined up already that are investigating how to do next steps on integrating other various content sources, because you know how it is in that headless world. There are a lot of players out there, and you know, since I started in Uniform in December, it's like every 2 weeks we run into a new headless CMS that nobody ever heard of. You do a bit of analysis on what it is, and you figure out they got 15, 20, 30,000 installations globally, but you never heard of them. And then you run into some agency that has maybe 20 different customers running it. For them, there is a clear business case in being able to create a simple integration into this and then spread that orchestration layer across, because then they do not have to rely on being basically tied into a specific platform, but this gives them the ability to very easily swap out platforms, and thereby also getting away from that platform replatforming cycle that is typical in the marketplace today as well. So while we were talking here, we now have the worker side of things running. So this is now running independently in a Cloudflare worker, and the page and the personalization is all being served off of the edge. So okay, I probably didn't pull in my personalization. See, that's what you get from doing live demos. Or is it just because I need to personalize for women instead? It is, of course, because I need to personalize for women. You just thought there was a bomber in there, but there was not. So everything personalized for women in the audience. So you have the header from Sitecore, the story from Sitecore, my test running on BigCommerce data, my commerce with different products, again from BigCommerce, and then some data coming in from Contentful in the bottom. So that's essentially how Uniform sees a truly composable DXP of the future, easy integrated, easily orchestrated, and allowing business users to work in a single tool across all the platforms. So that was the idea for a demo today around this. Any other questions?
There's a question in the chat from
I didn't see that.
Yeah, so it's around Order Cloud, Sitecore 451, I guess. When's that being integrated? I know that's on our roadmap. It isn't integrated currently. Obviously, Sitecore CMS, i.e. XM, XP is, but the order cloud is roadmap, so it's probably next year at some point. We have got obviously commerce tools, BigCommerce, and some other commerce platforms which are all vying for that position of next off. I know that Salesforce Commerce Cloud, I think, is the one that's next up. Yeah, there's plenty of different commerce platforms out there, so we'll be rolling them out.
Yeah, thanks, Jerry.
Yep.
Looks pretty cool.
Thank you.
Did anyone else have any other questions? I did put in the chat window as well. If you wanted to try this out, uniform.dev, there's a try out and an onboarding wizard.
Uniform.app.
Yeah, well, you can go through it. Yeah. So have a go. If you want to have a discussion with me about setting it up with a certain set of combinations of headless CMSs and commerce platforms and analytics platforms, reach out. We can see what we can do. We've got some good traction here in market as well with some of the big retailers. Couple of the big ones in one of the big groups here is on board with this. So yeah, we'd be happy to showcase and talk to you about doing it in one of your projects or even a POC.
Just a quick one. Do you have any info around pricing structure? Not pricing per se, but how's it structured basically?
What the product, how it's priced?
Yeah.
Well, the starting price is free, which is always good because you can try it out for free. And then, yeah, it's based on number of compositions. So number of pages is primary metric across multiple domains. So we come with packages. There are other metrics. The number of components that you integrate into the platform is limited as well, but the limits are reasonably high. We just don't make it 1 million. So if you've got all of your components built in React in Storybook and you've got 500, then it will be over the limit. If it's 40, it will be under the limit. But yeah, that's primary number of compositions, number of components, and we got secondary metrics as well on number of personalization intents.
Cool, thank you.
But the good point is you can try it out. It's free to start for now.
Nah, yeah. Good, guys. I hope it was interesting for you to see. And as Jerry says, we're here if you want to have a conversation on this. I will jump off and go back to my meeting spree here in Dubai. So thanks
Christian.
See you all.
Thanks for the demo, Christian.
Appreciate it. I'm hanging around.
Take care, everybody. Stay safe. Bye.
See ya. Cool. And yeah, thanks Jerry as well for the presentation. It's really good. All right, so Cameron and Samir, you guys can take it away. Feel free to go ahead and share your screen.
Yeah, hi Matthew, thank you. Let me see if I can share my screen here. Are you guys able to see my screen?
Yes.
All right, great. Let me see if I can make it into a presentation more that way. We can get a full screen out of it. Do you mind if one of you can tell, are you seeing the presenter mode or the full screen?
Full screen.
All right, great. Well, thank you. Well, thanks. Thanks. Hi everyone. My name is Samir. I'm here coming to this SUG for the first time. Some of you guys, I think I know I've met a couple of years back in Australia at one of the Sitecore developer groups. I actually, I run product here at SearchStax, and my focus and background is primarily been search and building in solutions kind of in the area of search platforms and teams. Today, I think we thought, kind of based on kind of the topic of the discussion, Cam and I thought it would be great to kind of talk about, personalization as well, and really kind of the last mile of the personalization that's focused around search. So that's kind of the focus. Again, I think that's about it. Cam, you wanna go next?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Samir. So yeah, I think it's great to see so many very familiar names and faces in the chat. So for anybody who doesn't know me, Cameron Walker, I'm a principal architect at Deloitte Digital. I run our national Sitecore and .NET capability team. Been working with Sitecore for about a decade, I think, and have been an MVP for the last 8 years. So yeah, we're obviously a premium or platinum partner as well, and definitely looking to hire people at the moment. So I guess the plug is, if you or any of your friends are looking for a switch in role and you want to do some cool Sitecore stuff and really get on this wave of moving towards full stack and headless and composable DXP, then yeah, definitely reach out and have a chat. Do you want to swap slides, Samir? Cool. So in terms of the agenda, we're going to go through a little bit of groundwork here. So a bit of anatomy of what is search, what's involved inside it, what's search personalization, how would we have traditionally done search personalization in the old world, and then we'll go and talk a little bit about modern search personalization and how machine learning fits in. And finally, we're going to do a demo. And so the demo we're going to show is plugging together some of the new functionality that's in the Sitecore CDP personalization, i.e. box ever tools inside of Sitecore, and how we can plug that into SearchStudio product and its relevance modeling that it does. Next slide, please. So first of all, in terms of search, the key parts of search, I guess, are indexing, of course, querying, and then scoring as well. So in indexing, obviously we've got analyzers, so it's all about tokenization, pulling together pulling apart the content that you're trying to indexing, running things like language filters or stemming or stopworks. And then really what you're doing in the index is you're storing it in documents and fields, and those are also being stored in the indexing vectors, so that you can go and get the fast performance you really need. And then on the other side, we talk about querying. So querying is when you put together your search terms. So that could be something simple like you type into Google, or it could be something built up out of different types of terms. With Boolean operators, you can have fuzzy matching and other things as well. But probably the key part to talk about here is, in terms of personalization, is scoring, right? So when you get results from a query, you're really getting a list of the products ranked in order of relevancy, and that relevancy is generally driven by two things. So generally speaking, it looks at term frequency, which is how often in a particular document the terms you've entered appear, and then what's called inverse document frequency. So really it's saying, well, across all documents in the index, how common are those words? So you might have a word that is in a particular document a lot, but is also in lots of other documents as well. And therefore it probably doesn't rate as high as another search term that is only in this one document and only there once or twice. And scoring really, as we'll talk about soon, is really how search personalization works. Next screen, please. Yeah, so there's a few things when people talk about personalization of search. There are a number of different things that people can mean or do mean. So first of all, I guess, is having dynamic search queries. So do you want to automatically add terms to search queries based on who the user is and therefore get back different results? Another way that's sometimes considered to be personalization is applying security rules or security filters. So if you've got a set of results and based on your role, you don't want certain users to see certain content, that's, I guess, a type of personalization that number of search engines allow you to do, and sometimes it's not really supported directly, and you have to kind of build that yourself through different sort of fields and tagging. Then, as I mentioned before, boosting and ordering. So this is probably the most common way to do it. So basically query tuning through things like different boostings added at the query time, or even things like click tracking. So this is, I guess, not really what you call personalization, but it's really a type of optimization of your search. So you'll see a lot, and obviously Google does this, and a lot of other search engines do this, where the click-through rates on certain results of a search will actually feed back into the search algorithm and control the boosting, really the index time boosting of those results. So it's not personalized, but it's definitely optimized. And then finally, machine learning and learning to rank, which I think Samir, you'll go and dive into in a bit more detail.
Yeah.
So, but before we go there, sorry, next slide. So some of the traditional approaches that we've done. So one of the things that we've definitely done before around personalization in Sitecore in particular is actually allow content authors to build up queries as one of their data sources. So this is an example of something we built for a client probably about 5 years ago, where a client could actually build a content author could build a query, and that was actually driving spots on their page where they wanted to pull back sets of things. And then by the fact that this thing was the data source, you could run personalization rules in Sitecore and choose which query that you wanted to execute. So that worked pretty well, obviously, for that sort of programmatic search area. But yeah, it's a little bit more complex to build and to configure. Query time boosting and security filtering we've touched on already. So maybe skip on the next step, on the next slide. Sunil.
Yeah, so typically, right? I think in the Sitecore ecosystem, I think a lot of you has probably worked with kind of various search engines, right? I think earlier Azure search, and then more and more kind of when people are trying to customize search within Sitecore environments, right? There is utilization of, you've seen earlier, and then Solar, right, in kind of the more 9 and the above versions of XM and XP. But at the end of the day, right, when you look at Solar or any other search engine, or out of the box Solar, what it really provides, right, is you kind of have two inputs to a search engine. One is around search terms, which is your query or kind of whether it's expanded or such, and then you have your data set or the documents that reside in your in your CMS or DXP. And then the search engine is really good at kind of taking those two and then really creating the top K results that are most relevant for the for the query that's been entered into the search engine, right? And then producing those kind of the best matches and rendering them right in the form of search results. So that's your typical out of the box Solar. Once you deploy that, the methods or the ranking algorithms that Cam mentioned earlier around TF-IDFs or any other algorithms, those are typically what Solar uses out of the box. That kind of says, hey, I'm going to look at certain queries, and then I'm going to see, based on the density of the keywords that are matched in the documents and other factors, how to best kind of rank the results that gets shown to the user, so that so that the right results are rendered on the top. Now, kind of taking that to the next level, right? I mean, the out of the box Solar, what it generally doesn't provide kind of control when it comes to kind of marketers and stuff is, how do we kind of take the human judgment or kind of the analytics aspect of of what's happening at the search results aspect and how users are interacting with the search results, and kind of feed that back into a search engine to actually create a measure, analyze, and optimize loop. right? SearchStax, has a product offering that focuses around having tools that allow marketers to be able to understand what's happening on the search side of things, providing them kind of more detailed dashboards, more detailed conversion reports, and how users are interacting with search, right? So one of the offerings of SearchStax, what it does is it actually allows within the Sitecore environment, allows you to actually capture how users are interacting with that search, and then captures all that information behind the scenes into an analytics engine that actually allows either any kind of a team, right? It can be a developer, it can be a marketing person, but then they can understand how users are using search or utilizing search, what are the opportunities where that might need improvement, and then provides kind of tools that allow you to either personalize or change the rankings using boosting mechanisms or any of those criterias, and then feeding that back into the search engine so that those results that are being spit out by the search engine are now kind of influenced not only by the ranking algorithms that are coming out of the Solr search engine, but also by some of the knowledge that that someone has actually utilized to kind of put these things into practice. And we'll go into a demo of that at the later stage. But that kind of helps create kind of a feedback loop, but that feedback loop is still kind of based on human judgment as opposed to an automated mechanism. But it still provides a mechanism within the Sitecore environment to be able to say, I can now see how people are interacting with my search results, what searches people might be ending up in an empty page or such, or actually say, I can create different criterias and such, and then change the way the search results are ranked based on what kind of persona or profile might be coming into my onto my website, and then dynamically ranking and changing the search results based on those personas or profiles. So that kind of enhances the feedback loop that's kind of based out of the box search engine or Solr that you have today. And then kind of where you take it from there is essentially the modern kind of techniques that are happening that kind of takes that human judgment as well as kind of out of the box Solr, is how do you become smarter and gather more and more data and utilize kind of machine learning to be able to now even further kind of add another layer of personalization or ranking improvements on top and in front of what might be coming out of the Solr, along with kind of what the human judgments have been entered into the system. So typical machine learning techniques, for search, I mean, typical, if you look at, current state-of-the-art machine learning problem, right? A typical machine learning problem is about solving a prediction problem, right? We're all familiar with spam classification, where you have a bunch of inputs, right? Which is your email addresses, and then you run kind of machine learning algorithms. And what the algorithm does a good job of identifying is, given an item, is it, does it fall in a particular bucket, right? And whether that's a non-spam bucket or whether that's a spam bucket or whether that's a, bucket number 3. So typical machine learning, algorithms are really good at kind of classifying various inputs. Now, how machine learning is applied to search is a little bit different, because in search, when you're looking at the rankings of the search results, it's less of a classification problem where we're trying to bucket, something that we're seeing into a set of buckets, whereas we're actually looking at a ranking, a list of items where you're seeing the top, 10 results or 10, 15 results or 20 results that are coming back from a search engine. The challenge from a machine learning perspective is how do I re-rank that particular list to kind of make sure that, that utilizes kind of the learnings that have happened, for that particular system. So there's a class of techniques, but essentially what is called in the search space, learning to rank mechanism. And learning to rank essentially solves a ranking of a list of an items, right, in the search space. And that's most commonly, when we talk about machine learning in the context of search results ranking, LTR is a most common mechanism that gets utilized to do that ranking. Now, to just kind of give a little bit of an idea, what learning to rank is and how it works. It is a supervised machine learning algorithm. What learning to rank does is it actually takes training data as an input, which essentially could be user click through data. It could be any other features that at that time you might have determined, right? So what it does is it says, hey, for this particular query, the user clicked on item number 1, it clicked on item number 2, it did not click on item number 3, it clicked on item number 4. And then for the next set of query, it also has the same set of judgments, and the next set of query, it also has the same set of judgment. And all that training data is then kind of fed into a learning system. And the learning system then, and there's various kind of ranking algorithms or learning algorithms to learn kind of from this training set. A lot of them are actually come out of Microsoft research, which finally creates kind of a model. And then what you have is your test set of data, which is your real data, where a query and a list of results are being returned. And then what the ranking model does is it takes those list of results and then re-ranks them by applying kind of the model that has been learned over the period of time. Now, all that learning actually happens offline, but then the search engine and then the model that gets created out of that learning is then pushed into Solr or search engine. And then the Solr now actually takes that model, that machine learned model, and then starts applying that to the, in real time to the queries that are coming in from a user perspective. So that's typically at a high level what kind of learning to rank does. Solr actually provides a module of learning to rank that can be deployed on top of your existing Solr deployments, and there are systems and algorithms that you can utilize to learn and provide data, and then utilize that model and push that model into a ranking system. So now if we go back to kind of the loop, the enhanced loop that we had, how that loop gets enhanced into really kind of creating a more smarter and personalized environment is where you have now your queries and documents that produces your naive set of, or primitive set of kind of search results that are coming back from a search engine. And now you have two things that are acting on top of it. One is you have the human element where they might have added some promotions or made sure that handcrafted certain results that should be tailored to certain searches, or they could have created certain rankings based on certain profiles and personas that would influence kind of the ranking of the search results. And then the second thing that's coming in now is kind of the same analytics data that's been captured gets fed automatically into a learning system. And that learning system creates a model that gets deployed on top of Solr. And on top of that Solr system, what it does is it now creates a re-ranking system that takes the first set of ranked results coming out of Solr, reorders that list, and then produces a more, ideally, right, a more personalized and a more relevant search results for the user. And that loop can kind of automate, in an automated way, continue, whereas you still have kind of the human aspect of it that can still look at kind of how things are behaving, and then how to influence that even further. So when you create these machine learning algorithms, I think where personalization comes into picture is, there's just the click items, but then there's also analytics that is being captured and learning kind of various set of features. And depending upon the set of features that you learn, that's where it can start to learn that all these items that are being clicked, fall into a certain persona or a profile that's interacting with the system. And then, that particular profile can be, will see a different set of search results compared to a different set of personas or profiles. So that's kind of at a high level, from kind of enhancing the search results. I think from a demo perspective, we're going to kind of lead into the demo, but just kind of for those of you who are kind of not familiar with SearchStax, SearchStax is a search as a service offered as a platform as a service and SaaS offering from the company. Really kind of focus for us is taking kind of letting, Sitecore and other kind of DXP providers really providing an easy, powerful, but easy search for both marketers as well as developers. Integrating search into an existing application, we've made it really easy for developers and then for the marketing teams to be able to have insights and analytics into kind of what's going on the search aspects of things, and then having tools to kind of improve that and personalize that experience and take it to the last mile of the kind of a digital experience from a website's perspective. You all might already be familiar with the current, we have two products today in the market. One of it's primarily focused around managed solar or solar as a service. So folks that don't want to be in the business of running, managing, and scaling a search infrastructure, we have a product offering that allows you to run that in a multi-cloud environment, really turnkey. You can plug in you can plug that into Sitecore. There's Sitecore modules and Sitecore support both on an XM, XP, and XE environments where you can just open Sitecore, utilize this URL that points to SearchStax, and in 15 minutes you can have a production grade solar environment up and running in any of the cloud environments that you have. And then the second offering we have, which we're going to focus on the demo, is around SearchStudio offering. Which is essentially providing tools and the layer on top of solar that allows marketers to be able to understand, how searches are performed, all sort of UX accelerators that allow for kind of very quick integrations into either in a headless based approach or a traditional approach, as well as provide relevance tuning, promotions, rules, merchandising, as well as personalization of results. And if you have any questions, happy to answer. Both the products have free trial that's available on the website. You can go on the website, searchstax.com/free trial, and start a free trial on any of the products and integrate them as well. We also have a Sitecore module that's available that integrates more, kind of have a deeper integration into Sitecore that does all the heavy lifting of kind of loading the data, as well as a Vue.js app that can automatically get deployed within Sitecore as an SXA or a page template that can get you up and running, integrated with SearchStax in fairly rapid manner. I've heard some people have taken about 30 to 60 minutes to get search up and running using SearchStax within their environments. Cam, you want to take the demo aspect of things?
Yes, I'll take it. While I'm setting it up, there's a couple of questions for you in the chat, Samir.
Oh, I didn't see that. Let me check. Okay, so one of the questions I'm seeing is how SearchStax going to be supporting phonetic or soundex for dealing with spelling discrepancy or providing digimean and fallbacks. SearchStax actually has a spell check and digimean capability into the product baked in as part of the API. In the product, you can just enable it, and the system actually takes a look at the data that has been indexed and utilizes that to provide spell check. And some of the work on the roadmap it's going on is actually using our analytics data clubbed with the kind of data that we have on the content side, and then further improving those spell check capabilities as we learn more from kind of the user interactions within a particular site or an implementation. I think the second question I have is, do your ML models only support English? What about CN, JP, KR? Yes, today I think the ML part that we have on the product integration side, that's the English part that we have. However, since SearchStax runs on top of Solar and utilizes Solar underneath the hood, Solar actually supports a wide variety of languages. So the learning to rank component, support is really what's driving the support for different languages. I personally haven't tried a different language using learning to rank. I've primarily utilized English as a language, but yeah, that's something I could probably ask one of our more kind of search architects and kind of understand, if we have done implementations around that utilizing different languages and machine learning.
Cool.
There you go. Thank you, Cam. Yeah.
No worries. Thanks, man. So we'll start the demo today just by quickly showing the integration into Solar for SearchStudio that Samir mentioned before. So if you go and install the module, you'll see you get a number of different things to help you configure search in here within the Sitecore environment. And just really quickly, in the if you're using, I guess, the old, what's now becoming the older XP way of working, there are some inbuilt templates and things that you can set up, and you can see down here that actually the sort of thing we're going to do today in a more sort of headless composable type approach, you could do something pretty similar. Oh, back here using XP as well. So you can actually set in some rules that will actually let you drive selecting a search model based on profile keys in the XTB interaction profile, or based on the pattern cards that you set up in Sitecore. So that sort of more traditional way of working is actually supported in here just by the module out of the box. But for today, I thought we would mix it up a bit and go with something a little bit more headless rather than the XP way of doing it. So we're going to go and use some of the capabilities of the new BoxEver platform that Sitecore's acquired recently, been rebranded as, I think, both Sitecore CDP and Personalized as two different parts of it. So you can see that it's capturing a whole lot of guest data, and we're actually going to be using some of the guests data in here. So there is, I can't remember which one of these it is. So one of these users, they've been captured. They'll have various properties, including, probably not this one, but they've got genders and other things in here. I've just picked the gender to drive my model off today, just because it's easy to build decision tables for. Then in the decisioning areas, like we said, what we built is a decision model here. So a search segment test. So really what we're going to be using here is a demo model. So if we just quickly look at this, this is in production, so you can't go and make any more edits to it, but there's a bit of a canvas here that you can use in BoxEver to pull in whole lots of different data and perform different types of logic to help feed into basically outputting a decision about what sort of user this is that we're going to use. At the moment, we're just taking the guest data in and using a decision table directly. This decision table is very simply set up to say that if the user that we pass or that we're using has male as their gender, then we're not passing a search model back at all. If they're female, we're going to pass the developer search model. And if there's no gender specified, then they'll pass back this other one. And then what we're going to do is use these to pass through to trigger the appropriate personalization approach in SearchStax. So in BoxEver, we set up a model, but then we actually need to expose that model through an experience. So we've created a full stack experience up here that we're going to be calling. So this full stack experience is just a way really of pulling together the model and then driving how that's going to be applied. You can see here we've assigned the decision model that we made to this full stack experience. We can do other things in here. Obviously, this is a fairly simple one. In BoxEver, you can create models that have things like offers and things, and you can return offers and different experiences and things as well. In this case, we're using it just to return that search model that we want to use. And you'll see over in here, what we have to do is we go and use this, I think it's called free code or something like that, to go and build our API output. So this is actually going and saying, okay, when we make the request, we're going to go execute that decision that we've got, and then we're going to go and pull out a response called search model that came out of the decision table. So search model is actually the name of that column that we had in our decision table as an output that returns developer or empty or whatever else. So those are the different moving parts in BoxEver we're using. So you'll see that this one's been pushed to its live. So this will return things. The decision, we've got the decision into production. They can have multiple different things and run experiments and things with these as well. So you could experiment whether, using the model that presents certain people as developers and others not, is more or less successful and run A/B tests and all sorts of things in here as well. So it's pretty powerful. On the SearchStudio side, so this is the SearchStudio dashboard. So all different analytics and stuff, as Sunil mentioned. So down in here, there has been some relevance models set up. And so you can see here those two that are referenced before. This here is the developer one. This is the one that we're going to be, I guess, pointing some of our users towards. I don't know if you want to mention anything about how this works, Samir.
Yeah, absolutely. A model inside SearchStudio is, think about, all the influences, right, that go into making sure that a particular, search result list is rendered given kind of a particular query or a set of queries, right, is kind of what we call models inside SearchStudio. So in a particular model, you can configure which fields do you want the search to go against, how do you want each of the field, how are they ranked, right? And that's kind of goes back into kind of going back, boostings and stuff like that. I want the title field to be boosted higher than descriptions. And then, from a marketer's perspective, they might have created certain rules where they may have had more targeted, more targeted kind of rules that might have created here. What I've done is we had created a Sitecore personalization rule. Cam, if you click on that particular link. So essentially what we have created a rule that is like whenever a term Sitecore personalization, is used in the search, then what I'd want is I want all the content that I have on my website that is of type documentation is boosted much higher than any other piece of content, right? So I might have documentation, I might have blogs, I might have other pieces of other content types. But in this particular model, which from a demonstration perspective, we're calling a developer model, essentially says is that whenever this model is activated, anytime user searches for Sitecore personalization, the documentation matches are ranked higher than any other matches. Now, from a marketer's perspective, they can create multiple rules, multiple promotions, or they could have even kind of created blanket rankings that more fit this particular kind of a like, let's say a persona, right, a developer persona. So that's kind of what all goes into creating a model, and you can create multiple models. And when Cam's talking about kind of activating these particular models depending upon what sort of criteria or decisions that the system is making, that's what you do is, depending upon criteria, you can pretty much initiate a particular model inside SearchStudio that will ensure that the results are ranked in a way that has been specified in that particular model, and it's not a static set of results that are being shown to kind of a user that anytime they're entering the same query or different kind of queries.
Thanks. Okay, so now we'll skip across and take a look at some of the code that we'll go through to show this. So so we build this in a headless way, and in true old-fashioned backend developer fashion. I chose my headless thing not to be a fancy JavaScript front end, but in this case a console app. There are a number of, Box here itself has a number of JavaScript libraries that help doing some of this stuff. The way that we've decided to do it here, if we go and look at this first one, so the first thing we do is going to go and get the model, the search model that we want to use back, and then we're going to pass that to our search query. In terms of getting the model, what we're doing is we're going to call the flows API here. So this is what's used to call those experiences that we set up back in Box server. So these guys up here. So these things are all different different flows. And you'll see here, if we look in here, that this flow has a name a friendly name here, search segment. So this is how we're going to target that in this bit of code. So you'll see here that we're basically building a request body. I'll kind of just quickly wrap it together in a text format. We get a client key. This is particular for the basically a call into Boxever as a client. In this case, we're passing an email. So there's a few different things that you can pass into Boxever as an identifier. In this case, we're passing an email. We have a known customer with an email that we're personalizing for. You can also do things like register a browser session through the API and then just pass that browser ID back in here. So that's really useful in cases where you may be dealing with unauthenticated or unidentified users, or if you're building up certain information within the current session and you want to personalize on that. All that information will go into the CDP, and then you can pass that browser ID here to do more of a session-based approach to this. And then the friendly ID here is how we're targeting that particular experience that we want to call. So these other fields here, channel, web, language, currency code, these things are all mandatory fields you have to pass in. I think some of these things like channel are really mostly about making sure that there is some segmentation of the analytics that get generated. So passing down, we'll get that request body, passed in as an application JSON, and we post it in. And then what we're going to do is we're going to pull that out and we're going to deserialize it into a decision result. So decision result's pretty simple. The JSON comes back, which is what we saw before over here in this response that we generated. So this is what's going to come back out and be presented to us. And then this is a very simple one. It's just deserializing one of those fields and putting it into a model for us, make it easier for us to use. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take that model value that we're passing back, and then we're going to pass it into a search query. So in here, we've got a request URL. So this is the SearchStudio instance that's been set up. So when you register your SearchStudio instance, this information is available through the interface. So you can pull this out. You can pull out your username, your password, all this sort of stuff. In this case, in our console app, we've actually got an optional term that you can pass in, that we can pass to the query. If you don't want a particular term, you can just pass star and it'll bring back everything. So we'll pass that in. Authorization for this is basic authentication. So here we're passing in the a username and password and turning that into a token. And then here, what we're going to do is, based on the search model, if the search model is passed, we're actually going to append that just as a query string parameter at the end of that request. Then we'll stream that back. We'll load it into a search result. So if we go into here, this search result, this all looks pretty complicated. There's actually a lot of stuff, a lot of information that's coming back from SearchStax for each of these. So I cheated building this. I used, if nobody's seen it before, you can go and paste special, and you can actually paste JSON as classes. So I got just an example of the JSON that came back from a search query and pasted it in here using that, and that's built all this serialization classes for me, which is really handy. You'll see if you go through here, there's a whole lot of detail. You're getting the response, you're getting a header that's showing your status and how quickly and all that sort of stuff. You're getting information about facets, you're getting some information response, the number of results. And then this is the key thing, really. This is our actual results. So like we said before, it's stored as documents, and those documents will have a number of different fields, and these are the ones which have been configured, as Samir mentioned, can be configured through the search model as well, I think. And then there's a whole lot of stuff about facets and highlighting and all sorts of stuff. So all this information is available. We're just going to use only a small part of this in the demo today. So, and then once we've got that result back and serialized it, we're just going to pass it and render it out into the console. It's a pretty simple way, and we're just going to show the top 10 results to come back. All right. So, compare my demo. So, first thing we'll call is we're just going to pass the. I don't know if hopefully people can see this. Okay, try and do a little bit bigger. So one of our users' emails. This guy obviously is a male user here. So you can see that if we scroll back up here, it goes and requests the search model for that thing. This is the result. So it's returned no search model. So again, that's gone through the decision model up here for this user. Where is it? And based on our decision model in here, we've said if the user's gender is male, then we don't return a result. We don't return a search model. In this case, it hasn't got a search model, so it's just passed in a query for everything without the search model. And you can see for this user, we're getting a lot of just random blogs mostly here of various sorts. And the results are fairly generic. That one sounds kind of technical. This one's a really generic one, really generic ones. So you can see that, yeah, the results are quite generic. So if I then try one of our other users, so we've got Sarah here. Sarah is, as you'll see, a female user with, according to the data and according to our model. If the gender is female for that record, it should return back developer as a result. So here we've passed that email in. Whatever's found the user that results that email, run their details through the model and return back that we should pass the developer model here. And you can see that passing that in that developer model, even though we're passing the same query term, which is a star, we're getting back very different information. So this is very technical documentation, type results here. And then some other web pages, maybe some other documentation as well. So we can also try the same test and pass in a search term. So we'll call George again. We'll pass in Azure as a search term. So again, we get the same model, no model. But you see it's very much pulling back different results here. Again, though, even though we're passing Azure, there's still mostly blogs and things. And whereas if we then go and pass Sarah, pass the same term. So again, we're using the developer model. And you can see here that the documentation, the results are still very different, right? The documentation's a bit further down, but it's still different, more technical type results. And this is, I guess, showing you that even though we're still passing that model, the model is really only just adjusting the scoring results that we're getting back out of the search. So it's not like we're telling it to use certain results or prioritizing just particular bits of data. It's really still using the search term and using that in combination with the search model that's coming out. Is there anything you want to add, Samir, before we finalize this?
No, I think I think Cam, that makes sense. Yeah, I think it's basically ties your kind of users to the model, right? And then depends upon what's configured in the model. I mean, that can be changed real time. So from a once you have the integration there, you can actually log into SearchStudio and change the model, and tweak it, and you can either preview it in your application or within SearchStudio, you can actually select a particular model and then try to see what results would look like in SearchStudio as well. So you can see that inside SearchStudio preview where as well. Yes, if you go to the SearchStudio tab and on the menu on the left, there is a search preview section. If you just click there, search relevance preview. If you go to relevance preview, that's where you can actually select a particular model on the top with the pencil icon above the search bar. You can select kind of which model do you want to use, and then do your searches here to kind of see how the model will actually impact the search results that are coming. It's just handy way to test kind of how different models will interact and what kind of results it'll return.
Yeah, cool. And then I guess the other version of that is once you think you've tweaked your model right, you can go in here and I think we can clone one of these, test one, just to do a bit of a demonstration. And we could actually have multiple models in here in production as well, having with different levels of traffic. So you could do a bit of a A/B test, maybe start 10% of your users going to the other model. You could also do some A/B testing on this so that you're getting a certain type of user will be getting one decision tree about what sort of model they should get, and another user could be getting another sort of decision tree to work out what sort of model they'll get. And then I guess a combination of tweaking the model and tweaking which model to use for a particular user is what gets you to your output. Cool. That's all I had. So any questions? We can maybe go back to the slide share.
I think there's some questions in the chat. Seems like there's a question around how is SearchStax compared to reflection by Sitecore.
Causing trouble, Jerry. Do you have a point of view that you want to raise about that?
Well, I don't think I have a point of view from as it relates to Sitecore. I haven't seen kind of the details on the reflection. My understanding is that's primarily currently focused around the commerce capabilities from a kind of more enterprise use case commerce scenarios. But again, maybe perhaps some of the Sitecore folks might know more.
That's cool.
Yeah, that's the feedback I've heard as well. Is that it's mostly aimed at commerce at the moment, but I think they will surely be adding more focus on content moving forward, I'm sure. So I don't know if you saw this one, Samir. Does SearchStax need a certain volume of data, i.e. search queries, before the learning system can start personalizing results?
Yeah, I did not see that question. Thanks. Yes, I think unfortunately, any kind of learning system, right, requires a test data. Now, what SearchStax, you can have features, right? I mean, any learning is really utilizing the features. Now, typically, what SearchStax utilizes is the analytics data or the click data, as well as kind of the interaction data. So you do need a certain amount of data to be fed, and I think the systems actually kind of looks at how much data is being collected and kind of make that decision. Now, in certain cases, you can also use other features that are there. Like you can actually use learning to rank not only for user interaction data, you can also utilize features that are built into your content and utilize them as as the ranking parameters. But to answer your question, yes, we do require some sort of interaction data. One of the things that on the SearchStax side we're working is enhancing that learning system by not only utilizing input from the SearchStax analytics, but then see if we can bring data from third-party kind of analytics systems, right? Maybe if you're using Google Analytics or if there's Sitecore XDB data that can be pulled into actually that learning model that can then feed into the ranking system. So that's something that's that's being experimented.
Are there any other questions or stuff? Did you want to put this slide deck back up, Samir, as well? While we're
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. We'll do. Let me share my slide.
I got a quick question while we're loading out. on this. This looks really good, actually. I remember, hopefully I'm not on mute. Yeah, I remember having a lot of issues with sorting Solar out, and having it as a service is obviously fantastic, and this looks really good. Just look at your website. Obviously Googled it. The search worked, #1, which is pretty cool. So you work with Sitecore, AM, Drupal, but the managed Solar overview, is that for sort of anything, or like in the composable world? We obviously at Uniform are talking about composability. Sitecore's talking about it. Like when there's a stack of things, is that where the managed Solar comes in?
Yeah, so I think in a search world, right? So there's kind of two aspects of it, right? Solar is just kind of an open source search engine, right? That is one layer of, or one part of the equation. I think what SearchStax has done is it's actually, taken Solar and then, really kind of packaged that and added kind of proprietary, proprietary kind of layer, right? In some sense on top of it that kind of extends Solar with the capability set that Solar doesn't have, right? Things like analytics, things like, the search management aspects, things like, making kind of learning to rank easy and integrating with analytics aspects. So these things are just not available in Solar. So what SearchStax has done is it delivers that in a kind of a SaaS environment in kind of SearchStudio mode. And so that, any kind of DXPs can start to kind of utilize that, still utilize the power of, kind of the Solar and the data integrations and everything, so that not all DXPs have to kind of go rewrite their, data ingest to kind of ingest into a third-party, search engine that has a proprietary indexing layer, right? So that's why, like, your Drupal, Acquia, Adobe, as well as Sitecore, they all support, Solar natively. And that makes the data ingestion aspects really, really easy. And we've crafted modules for all of these to kind of just make the integration easier as well, right? So that's another piece of value add that SearchStax brings to the table. But at the end of the day, it's in, SearchStax is an API that can be integrated, in any fashion. And then there are kind of different components that can be utilized depending upon kind of the use case, right? And also, what's the implementation kind of methodology and mechanism and how implementation needs to happen.
Cool, thanks. Really good.
Yeah, it's definitely. I think the SearchStudio is definitely like the way of the future for utilizing SearchStax, in my opinion. Like, obviously the guys have been working with Sitecore for a while. SearchStax is actually what powers the Solar search inside the Sitecore managed cloud, amongst other things. So yeah, been working with Sitecore a long time, I think. But yeah, I'm really excited about the SearchStudio stuff. It's a really good product, I think.
Yeah, I think that's right, Cam. Like SearchStax actually powers all of managed cloud, or most of the managed cloud environments today, XM and XP. On the managed cloud side, actually the search that gets provided is under the hood SearchStax that gets delivered.
Yeah, and I know that I think I first met Samir about 5 years ago, working on something like that, and just being able to take even Solar Cloud, when you're just using more direct Solar Cloud off your hands, is very useful, because it's actually a pretty painful thing to deal with, in my opinion. Cool. Anyway, in terms of the demo assets, so the demo that we just showed there, those decision models, experience APIs, anybody who's got access to the partner sandbox for Boxever, we're all sharing the same sandbox. So if you look around for those things, you'll find those examples. There's a couple of links there. Please don't change them too much, because they're shared by everyone. So if you break them, then no one else can use it. I'm happy to share the code if anybody's interested from that console app. Just maybe reach out on LinkedIn or whatever if you want it. If there's enough interest, I'll put it up somewhere where everybody can get it. But yeah, happy to share that as well. And yeah, as Samir already mentioned, SearchStax has a free trial. You can log in and start playing around with SearchStudio as well, I think. Anything else, Samir, do you want to add?
Yeah, no, trials are available for both, depending upon kind of what you're looking at. Happy to, there's a Sitecore module as well, and documentation provides details for that as well, if you're interested. And if there's any questions or anything you'd like to know, you know, please feel free to reach out, and happy to help.
Awesome.
Well, I guess that's a good spot to wrap it up. I suppose just a last chance for any questions for SearchStax and Cameron from Deloitte. What we still have? No, take that as a no. Cool. Well, thanks guys. Thanks Cameron and Samir for the demo, and thanks as well to Jerry and Uniform. Just a reminder, we've recorded this session. We'll share it on YouTube afterwards, as usual. I'll share that link out to the group. And yeah, I guess we'll leave it there. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Cheers. Thanks.
Thanks.
Good evening, everyone.